Tonight, we embark on a journey into the murky depths of one of history's most captivating enigmas, the story of Tartaria. Imagine walking through an ancient land, shrouded in mystery, where colossal have roamed, and a once great empire vanished without a trace. This empire, according to some, could have stretched across vast portions of Asia, and its history is filled with whispers of giant skeletons and lost knowledge. You're about to dive into the murky waters of Tartarian myth and history. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to post your location and the time where you are watching this. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins in the shadowy corners of ancient maps, where the word Tartaria once appeared, sometimes in places it really shouldn't have. As we venture into this fascinating tale, it's essential to understand that Tartaria wasn't just some far-flung mythical land. It was a real region, but its existence seems more elusive than you'd expect. You've probably heard about it through a variety of sensationalized sources: giant skeletons, advanced technologies, and civilizations wiped from the face of the earth. But just how much of this is rooted in fact, and how much of it is purely fiction? The first thing to consider is the historical reality of Tartaria. Geographically, Tartaria was roughly located in Central Asia, encompassing parts of Siberia, Mongolia, and what we now call Russia. Historical references to Tartary began as early as the 13th century, most notably by travelers like Marco Polo, who encountered a large empire in the vast expanses of the East. But when you look at these old maps, things get a bit odd. The maps show a Tartaria that extends far beyond the traditional boundaries of Central Asia, often stretching to areas in Europe and even into the Americas. So, what happened to it? What's the story behind its mysterious disappearance? And why did it vanish from historical records? Was there a great catastrophe that wiped out an empire so grand it was only known in whispers? Now, let's take a deeper dive into the mystery of Tartaria, and you'll start to notice something odd. Maps from the 17th and 18th centuries, maps that predate many modern empires, show Tartaria covering an area that doesn't quite match up with what we know today. In some versions, you can see large stretches of land covered by this label. Yet in our modern understanding, no empire of that scale ever existed in that region. As bizarre as it sounds, some people believe that these old maps hold the key to uncovering a long-forgotten truth. It's almost as if the world simply erased Tartaria from memory. But why? Was it a case of historical revisionism, or something far more mysterious? To complicate matters further, there are those who claim that Tartaria was home to giants, real giants. You've probably seen the grainy photographs of so-called giant skeletons dug up in ancient ruins. These images, though highly controversial, stoke the fires of curiosity. What if there's truth to these claims? Could an ancient race of giants have once walked the earth, their bones now lost to time? Let's explore this idea. The story of giant humans isn't new. Cultures around the world have legends of giants, whether it's the Nephilim in the Bible or the Jotun in Norse mythology. Could these myths be rooted in something real? Something we've yet to fully understand? The idea of giants is woven into the folklore of many civilizations, and many ancient texts mention beings of extraordinary size. But in the case of Tartaria, things get particularly interesting. Could these ancient tales be based on actual skeletal remains found across the vast Siberian plains? Scholars have long debated the existence of giant skeletons. While many of the supposed discoveries have been debunked as hoaxes or misidentified remains, a small but vocal group still believes that evidence exists that hasn't yet been fully uncovered, or worse, that it's been suppressed. In fact, there are some who believe that governments or powerful organizations have deliberately erased these discoveries to keep the truth from the public. But how would this be possible? How could such a conspiracy be so widespread, yet remain hidden for centuries? To answer that, you'll need to consider the political climate of the time. The 18th century was a period of exploration and discovery, but also one of great change and upheaval. Was it really in the best interests of certain powers to allow the knowledge of a giant civilization to spread? The tale of Tartaria, giants, and forgotten histories is a complicated web of fact and fiction, and as we journey further into the mystery, you'll begin to realize that as we continue this deep dive into the enigma of Tartaria, it's time to consider just who the Tartarians actually were. Was this vast empire a hidden chapter of history, or just an elaborate myth passed down through the centuries? You're about to find out just how much of this story is rooted in fact, and how much is built on speculation and legend. First things first, Tartaria was, in historical reality, a term used by European cartographers and explorers to describe the vast lands to the east of Russia and into Central Asia. It wasn't a singular unified empire as some suggest, but more of a loose collection of peoples, including Mongols, Turkic tribes, and even some Siberian groups. This region was vast, extending all the way from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. But here's the twist. While Tartaria was recognized in these terms, there was no real, consistent, political entity with that name. The lands known as Tartaria were divided, constantly shifting, and often ruled by various nomadic tribes or conquerors. In short, the historical reality of Tartaria doesn't exactly match the grandeur often attributed to it in modern myth. And yet, the legends have persisted. But what if this was intentional? There's a theory that suggests that Tartaria was a much more advanced civilization than history has given it credit for. Could the Tartarians have had a highly organized society, complete with sophisticated technology and a sprawling empire? This notion is fueled by strange artifacts, some seemingly out of place for their time, that have been linked to the region. Could these remnants hold the key to understanding just how advanced these people were? The first oddity comes in the form of architecture. Some buildings found in the areas once thought to be part of Tartaria display an advanced level of craftsmanship that doesn't seem to fit with what we know about the technology of the time. From the intricate details of large stone constructions to the scale of certain structures, there are questions that remain unanswered. How could these nomadic tribes, who had no written language, build such complex structures? Could these buildings have been left by an even older civilization, one that was advanced beyond what we imagine for its time? And then we have the concept of advanced technology. Tartaria, it seems, may have been home to more than just advanced architecture. Some enthusiasts believe that the Tartarians possessed knowledge and technologies far beyond what we typically associate with the period. Could they have harnessed forms of energy that we've only recently rediscovered? This theory takes us into a world of speculation, where ancient energy sources, lost inventions, and forgotten wisdom might explain some of the mysterious aspects of Tartarian history. But here's the rub: there's very little tangible evidence to back up these ideas. Sure, there are ancient texts that mention remarkable advancements, but these are often ambiguous and open to interpretation. The most famous of these texts, written by explorers and historians from the time, seem to paint Tartaria as a largely primitive, albeit vast, land. No mention of lost technology or hidden secrets here, yet some continue to argue that this information has been deliberately concealed. But why? Could it be that Tartaria was far more influential than we give it credit for, only to be overshadowed by the rise of other powerful empires? The rise of Russia and China, for instance, could have led to the erosion of Tartaria's prominence in historical records. Perhaps the empire's rulers, whoever they may have been, were involved in a secret campaign to suppress the truth of their technological prowess. Take, for example, the strange, almost surreal images that continue to surface from the region. People have reported finding objects that seem to belong to a time far ahead of their own, tools with unknown functions, intricate devices with no apparent purpose. What if these are relics of a lost civilization that, for reasons unknown, never made it into the history books? But here's where it gets tricky. The story of Tartaria isn't a simple one. For every person who swears by its technological advancements, there's an equal number of historians who dismiss these claims as fanciful. They argue that many of the artifacts associated with Tartaria are either misidentified or simply the work of later cultures. This leads us into an ongoing debate. What is the true story of Tartaria? Is it a forgotten civilization, or is it a myth constructed from the remnants of various cultures over time? As you ponder these questions, consider the people who are said to have lived in the region, the Tartarians themselves. Were they truly giants, as some legends suggest? Or were they simply a people whose reputation was exaggerated over time? The image of the Tartarian giant has persisted for centuries. But is it based on actual evidence, or is it merely a product of myth and folklore? It's a tough call, But we can't deny the fact that some of the artifacts discovered in the region seem to point toward a level of sophistication that doesn't entirely fit with the traditional narrative of ancient peoples. Whether they were giants or simply a people far ahead of their time, the truth about the Tartarians remains locked away, shrouded in mystery. Now that we've introduced the core idea of Tartaria, it's time to get into the meat of the legend. The giants. Yes, the giants. It's a theme you've probably come across when looking into Tartarian history, those towering, godlike figures that some claim once roamed the earth. But what does the evidence say? Is there any real basis for these wild claims? Or are they just the stuff of fantastical tales? To start, let's look at the archaeological discoveries that have fueled these giant theories. Over the years, various reports have surfaced of giant skeletons being unearthed from ancient burial sites across Siberia and Central Asia. These skeletons, if the reports are to be believed, are said to measure over 10 feet tall, towering far above the average human size. Now, I know what you're probably thinking: giant skeletons sound like something straight out of a fantasy novel, right? Well, it's important to take a step back and ask, could these reports hold any truth? One of the most famous examples comes from a claim made by the Russian historian Mikhail Lermontov in the 19th century, who supposedly uncovered accounts of giant human skeletons found in ancient Tartarian tombs. According to Lermontov, these giants were described as having enormous skulls, broad bones, and feet large enough to make modern human giants look like children. But, as is often the case with ancient mysteries, there's no hard evidence to back up Lermontov's claims, just the reports of those who supposedly saw these remains. In fact, many skeptics believe these giant skeletons were merely the exaggerated remains of individuals who were of above-average height, or worse, the victims of hoaxes. However, if you're feeling skeptical about the whole thing, you're not alone. Archaeologists and historians have often debunked these stories as fabrications, based on misinterpretations or a simple lack of evidence. And yet, despite these objections, the allure of the giants remains strong. What's more interesting is the cultural significance of giants across history. The concept of giants isn't unique to Tartaria. Almost every major culture on Earth has its own version of these towering beings. From the Greek Titans to the biblical Nephilim, and even to the Norse Jotun, there seems to be a common thread running through these stories. Giants are often portrayed as powerful, enigmatic, and sometimes even destructive. Could this universal theme point to some lost knowledge of a bygone civilization, like Tartaria, that was home to these mythical beings? Perhaps the giants of myth are not just legends, but echoes of a forgotten reality. Let's take a moment to step away from the bones and skeletons, though, and consider another possibility. The giants weren't literally giant humans, but rather symbolic representations of a far greater power. In many ancient cultures, giants were associated with the gods or ancient kings who were thought to possess supernatural strength or wisdom. If Tartaria was truly a place of advanced technology and mysterious architecture, could the giants simply be a metaphor for those who ruled or built these awe-inspiring structures? It's an interesting thought, especially when you consider the colossal, nearly impossible to replicate monuments that remain in regions once connected to the Tartarians. For example, the megalithic structures scattered throughout Siberia and Mongolia seem to defy logic in terms of how ancient people could have constructed them with the tools available at the time. Giant stones, some weighing hundreds of tons, are arranged in patterns that suggest a deep understanding of engineering and astronomy. Could these monumental projects have been the work of people much larger or much more advanced than we give them credit for? Or are these just remnants of a forgotten people, left behind by an empire that collapsed so thoroughly, even its memories were erased? Here's where things start to get truly mind-bending. There are even some researchers who claim that Tartaria was once the cradle of an ancient race of giants who used advanced technologies, such as electricity or geothermal energy, that modern societies have only recently rediscovered. These proponents argue that the collapse of Tartaria could have been a catastrophic event that not only wiped out an entire civilization, but also erased the knowledge of how to harness such technologies. It's an alluring theory, but also one that raises more questions than answers. If such technologies existed, why do we have no clear evidence of their use? And more importantly, why hasn't any definitive proof been found of this so-called giant civilization. Despite the skepticism surrounding the existence of giants, there is a fascinating intersection between the mythological giants and the stories of Tartarian technology. Could the belief in giants have been inspired by real historical figures whose size and influence loomed so large that their very existence became mythologized over time? Or was it the people of Tartaria who, in their advanced knowledge and construction, became the giants in the eyes of the other civilizations? This ongoing debate has led to even more elaborate theories, suggesting that these giants might have been part of a global network of ancient civilizations that exchanged knowledge, technologies, and even physical traits. Could it be that the people of Tartaria were the original giants of this world, their memory erased by time and war, leaving only fragments of their towering presence in the form of ruins and artifacts scattered across the globe? The tale of the Tartarian giants is one that invites more questions than answers. While mainstream historians and archaeologists continue to dismiss the stories as myth or misinterpretation, there's no denying that something strange exists within the remnants of this lost civilization. Whether these giants were real or merely symbolic, the mysteries of Tartaria and its forgotten people remain one of history's greatest puzzles. As the legend of the giants continues to swirl in the background, we now turn to one of the most puzzling aspects of Tartarian history: its sudden and mysterious collapse. What exactly happened to this once prosperous empire? How did a civilization so advanced, according to some, vanish without a trace? The theories surrounding the fall of Tartaria are as diverse and speculative as the empire itself, and today we'll explore some of the most intriguing possibilities. The first theory we need to tackle is the idea of a catastrophic event, an earthquake, a natural disaster, or perhaps even a series of devastating climate changes. Some proponents of this theory argue that Tartaria's downfall was nothing short of an apocalyptic event, one so destructive that the empire simply could not recover. Imagine a sudden environmental disaster so overwhelming that it eradicated cities, wiped out entire populations, and left nothing but rubble in its wake. Could this explain the mysterious disappearance of Tartaria? What's particularly fascinating about this theory is the number of strange, yet undeniable, environmental anomalies that have been reported across the region. For instance, Siberia's vast tundra holds a multitude of ancient ruins, stone structures, carvings, and artifacts that appear to have been built in times long past. These remnants suggest that the area was once far more temperate, potentially even fertile. Some experts believe that a sudden climate shift, such as a dramatic ice age, could have caused a rapid collapse of the civilization, forcing the Tartarians to abandon their cities and their technological marvels. But is this theory enough to explain the absolute erasure of the Tartarian Empire from the historical record? Perhaps not. Some argue that the environmental catastrophe theory doesn't fully account for the sudden and systematic disappearance of all evidence. There are also those who suggest that the collapse wasn't natural at all. In fact, many have pointed to the possibility of intentional destruction, a war, or even a series of wars, aimed at wiping out Tartaria from the face of the earth. What if Tartaria was systematically erased from history by external forces? The rise of the Russian Empire, the Mongol invasions, or the expanding powers of China and Persia could have all played a part in the decline of this once mighty empire. Could powerful empires have conspired to obliterate Tartaria, either through conquest or deliberate suppression of knowledge? This theory is particularly compelling when you consider the fact that many of the original Tartarian cities and settlements were located in regions that later came under the control of other rising powers. The Russian Empire, in particular, would have had the motivation to erase or subsume Tartaria's identity, claiming its vast lands and resources as their own. In this context, the mysterious lack of written records about Tartaria becomes especially interesting. If Tartaria was a real empire, with a complex political and cultural structure, why are there so few surviving documents or accounts? Some scholars argue that this is due to the erasure of the empire's written history by its conquerors. What better way to consolidate power than to completely erase the memory of the civilization you just defeated? Another possibility is the theory of secret knowledge. Could it be that the collapse of Tartaria wasn't simply physical, but ideological? Some believe that Tartaria, with its advanced technologies and mysterious abilities, represented a society that had mastered forces of nature that others could not comprehend, perhaps even forces that could be harnessed for immortality or godlike power. In this case, The destruction of Tartaria might have been less about military conquest and more about a desire to control the secrets that the Tartarians held. Could this have been a battle for knowledge, one where the victors erased the traces of a superior civilization in order to monopolize their own version of history? The idea of lost technologies plays a significant role in this theory. Could the Tartarians have developed some form of advanced energy source or infrastructure that other civilizations couldn't replicate, and which they were actively trying to suppress? This idea harkens back to the strange, almost futuristic artifacts that have occasionally surfaced from the region, sparking speculation that Tartaria was far more technologically advanced than we ever imagined. Imagine a society that not only had the power to build massive stone structures, but also harnessed energy or knowledge in ways that still baffle us today. But let's take a step back and consider another theory: a gradual decline. Not every empire collapses in a single dramatic event. Sometimes, the slow erosion of power, resources, and influence can lead to a quiet fall into obscurity. Could it be that Tartaria simply faded from relevance, slowly losing its grip on power as neighboring empires rose to prominence? The concept of a gradual collapse is often overlooked in favor of more dramatic narratives, but it's a plausible explanation. After all, we know that many once mighty empires like the Byzantine Empire or the Roman Empire did not collapse in a single moment but rather over centuries of decline. This theory is particularly compelling when you consider the historical context of the time. Tartaria was in a region where many different cultures, religions, and empires intersected. The Mongol invasions, the rise of Russia, and the expansion of China and Persia would have all contributed to the complex geopolitical landscape in which Tartaria existed. It's possible that Tartaria, like so many empires before and after it, was simply outpaced by the rise of new powers and eventually absorbed into the broader historical narrative, its existence fading into myth. Whatever the cause of its fall, whether it was a catastrophic disaster, a deliberate act of destruction, or a slow decline, one thing is certain: the disappearance of Tartaria remains one of history's greatest mysteries. As we continue to explore the evidence and theories surrounding the empire, we can't help but wonder, was Tartaria truly the powerful, technologically advanced civilization some claim it was? Or is it simply the stuff of legend, its mysteries forever lost to the sands of time? Let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that could potentially unlock a major piece of the Tartarian puzzle: the mysterious maps. If there's one thing that adds to the intrigue of Tartaria, it's the collection of ancient maps that show regions labeled as Tartary, some in places they shouldn't be, others with such detail it's hard to ignore. These maps, created by early cartographers, have become a source of both fascination and frustration for those who seek the truth about this lost empire. Could they hold the key to understanding the true extent of Tartaria's reach, or do they merely reflect the imagination of cartographers who didn't know what they were looking at? The most compelling of these maps come from the 16th and 17th centuries, a time when European explorers were charting the globe and filling in gaps of knowledge about the world. But here's where it gets weird. Some of these maps show a vast, unified landmass stretching from Siberia across to North America. One of the most famous examples is the Map of Tartary, created by the Dutch cartographer Arnoldus Montanus in 1671. This map shows an enormous region labeled as Tartary, extending far beyond what would be expected, even including parts of what we now call Alaska and the Pacific Northwest. This alone is fascinating, right? How could a map from the 17th century, long before modern geographical surveys, include territories that were unknown to the Western world at the time? It's almost as if Montanus had access to information that has since been lost or deliberately erased. But how could that be? Were these maps simply the product of educated guesses, or did they reflect a much broader understanding of the world? There's no definitive answer. But one thing is certain: these maps complicate our understanding of ancient geography, and they have led many to question the traditional historical narrative. Of course, there's an obvious counter-argument. Critics argue that these maps could simply be the result of imagination and myth. Early cartographers, lacking modern tools and relying on second-hand information, often filled in the blanks with wild guesses. Some even believe that the appearance of Tartary in such vast territories was just a placeholder for unexplored lands, rather than evidence of an actual empire. After all, during this time, the concept of Tartary was often used to describe vast, uncharted regions in the east, and there was little understanding of the exact boundaries of the lands involved. But here's where things get even stranger. Some versions of these maps don't just show Tartary as a vast empire. They show it with intricate details. The famous Pere Castaneda library map from 1595, for example, doesn't just depict a large stretch of land labeled Tartary. It shows rivers, mountains, and even cities within it. The level of detail is mind-boggling when you consider that these regions were still largely unknown to the Western world. How did the cartographers know this information? Were they relying on ancient sources? Or did they have access to something else, perhaps even first-hand accounts from lost explorers who wandered through Tartaria? One of the most curious aspects of these maps is their consistency. Even though they were created by different people at different times, many of these maps depict similar regions with the same label, Tartary. Some go so far as to show not just one large landmass, but a complex web of interconnected states, suggesting that Tartaria wasn't just one unified empire, but a collection of territories tied together by shared heritage, language, or culture. The consistency across these maps leads some to wonder if there was once a real, coordinated empire that spanned a vast area, and if the maps somehow preserved this information from a lost era. But not all of these maps depict a large, unified landmass. Some show Tartary broken up into smaller territories, often labelled with terms like Great Tartary and Little Tartary, suggesting that the empire may have been more fractured than we thought. This fits with what we know about the history of the region. Tartaria was never truly one cohesive political entity, but rather a collection of tribes and peoples scattered across a vast land. The idea that there were different levels of control and influence across the empire is supported by the geographical nature of the region, which was home to many nomadic tribes. So, what are we to make of these maps? Do they prove the existence of a grand empire, or are they merely the product of myth and guesswork? As with most aspects of the Tartarian mystery, there's no definitive answer, but the fact that these maps continue to surface, often with astonishing accuracy, makes it hard to dismiss them entirely. Some modern researchers believe that these maps may hold clues to a forgotten chapter of history, one that was erased or concealed by later empires. Could it be that the true history of Tartaria was lost, not to time, but to deliberate suppression? It's a tantalizing theory. After all, history is written by the victors, and if Tartaria was truly as advanced as some suggest, it stands to reason that powerful forces would have had a vested interest in ensuring its memory faded into obscurity. Then again, it's possible that these maps simply reflect a mix of speculation and myth, with the cartographers filling in the blanks with their own assumptions and the stories they had heard. After all, the concept of Tartary was often tied to vague ideas about the unknown East, a place filled with mystery and danger. These maps, then, might just be an artistic representation of that fear and fascination, rather than an accurate portrayal of an ancient empire. The more we dig into these maps, the more we realize that they're not just geographical records, they're windows into the minds of the people who created them. Whether these maps point to a forgotten civilization, or simply reflect the myths of the time, they remain one of the most compelling pieces of the Tartarian puzzle. And who knows, maybe one day, we'll find that missing piece of the map, the one that finally answers the question of whether Tartaria ever truly existed. Until then, the mystery remains, carried forward by these curious relics of the past. Having journeyed through the maps and giant skeletons, it's time to focus on something truly extraordinary. The architecture left behind by Tartaria, or what some claim was left behind by the Tartarians. If you've ever found yourself looking at ancient structures and wondering how on earth they were built with the limited tools available at the time, you're not alone. The remnants of Tartarian architecture are perhaps the most fascinating and perplexing evidence in the debate over whether this lost empire was as advanced as some suggest. It's easy to imagine ancient civilizations using rudimentary tools and simple construction methods to build their cities, right? But then you come across structures that seem so far ahead of their time, it leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew about ancient architecture. You've likely seen the kinds of buildings I'm talking about: huge stone arches, domed roofs, and ornate facades, all designed with a level of precision that is almost impossible to replicate using only hand tools and manual labor. Some of these structures, found across Siberia and Central Asia, defy the conventional understanding of ancient construction. Take, for instance, the walled cities and fortresses that dot the region. These were not small, makeshift structures, but large, fortified complexes built with precision-cut stones and bricks. The design of these buildings suggests advanced engineering knowledge that many historians believe was far beyond what the local tribes of Tartaria could have possessed. According to traditional historical accounts, the people of Tartaria were largely nomadic, so how could they have constructed such complex, permanent buildings? The first theory that comes to mind is that these structures weren't actually built by the Tartarians at all, but rather by an earlier civilization, one so advanced that its technology was lost with the fall of Tartaria itself. Could these buildings be the remnants of a much older civilization, one that preceded the Tartarians? The idea of an even earlier empire that possessed advanced architectural knowledge is certainly intriguing, especially when you consider the possibility that Tartaria simply inherited or rediscovered this knowledge as it rose to prominence. But there's another theory that's equally compelling. Maybe the Tartarians themselves were far more advanced than we give them credit for. Consider this. The vast majority of ancient civilizations didn't have the tools we would expect them to use for large-scale construction projects, yet they managed to build massive pyramids, towering temples, and awe-inspiring cities. How did they do it? Some suggest that the key to their success lay in lost technologies, tools, or methods that have been completely forgotten. If the Tartarians were indeed using such technologies, it could explain why their architecture is so difficult to replicate today. And it's not just the scale or complexity of these buildings that's puzzling, it's the materials. Many of these structures are made of stone, marble, and granite, which were often transported from far-flung locations. The fact that these materials were used with such precision and care suggests a level of craftsmanship that is rare in ancient construction. In some cases, the stone blocks are so finely cut that you can't even slip a knife blade between them, something that would have required highly advanced tools. But here's the kicker. Much of this construction was done in regions that should have been inhospitable to such ambitious building projects. The harsh climates of Siberia and Central Asia, combined with the nomadic nature of the people in the region, make it hard to believe that a people with such seemingly limited resources could have built these monumental structures. Some theorists believe that the Tartarians were not only more advanced than we think, but they also had access to techniques that we have yet to rediscover. Could this forgotten knowledge have been passed down through secret societies, hidden in plain sight for centuries? Take, for example, the mysterious domes and arched roofs found in many of these structures. These architectural features are not only aesthetically striking, but they also have practical benefits, such as better energy efficiency and durability against natural disasters. The use of domes and arches dates back to ancient Rome and Greece. But why are these same designs appearing in regions associated with Tartaria? Was it possible that the Tartarians had access to the same kinds of architectural knowledge as the Romans? Or did they somehow surpass it? What's even stranger are the underground cities and tunnels that have been discovered in the region. These subterranean structures are often linked to the idea of advanced civilizations hiding in plain sight, possibly to avoid detection from invaders or to protect themselves from environmental disasters. Could these underground networks have been built by the Tartarians themselves? Or were they part of an even earlier civilization's legacy? The idea of underground cities isn't just a figment of science fiction. There are documented cases of such cities in Asia, including those that have been rediscovered in places like Cappadocia in Turkey. Could these structures represent a level of adaptation and ingenuity that allowed the Tartarians to survive the harsh conditions of their time? The more you examine these architectural wonders, the harder it becomes to dismiss the idea that Tartaria might have been home to a much more advanced civilization than previously believed. Even the location of these structures raises questions: why were they built in such remote, inhospitable areas? The sheer ambition and scope of these buildings suggest that the people who built them were driven by a profound vision of their place in the world. Could it be that the Tartarians weren't just building cities, they were creating a legacy that would stand the test of time, even as their empire crumbled? And here's the real mystery. If the Tartarians were as advanced as some believe, why do we have so little evidence of their achievements? Could it be that the knowledge they used to build these incredible structures has been lost, intentionally hidden, or simply forgotten over the centuries? And if it was hidden, who stands to gain from keeping these secrets buried? The mystery of Tartarian architecture is one that continues to fascinate historians, architects, and conspiracy theorists alike. While mainstream scholars are quick to dismiss the idea that the Tartarians had access to advanced technology, the evidence of their architectural feats cannot be easily ignored. Whether these structures were built by giants, as some believe, or by a people whose knowledge and skills have been obscured by time, one thing is clear. The mystery of Tartarian architecture is far from solved. With architecture still lingering in your mind, let's take a closer look at the Russian connection because, honestly, you can't talk about Tartaria without bumping into Russia somewhere along the timeline. Historically, much of what was once labeled as Tartary eventually came under Russian influence. But here's the thing. Some theorists suggest that Russia may have had a hand in ensuring that Tartaria's true story stayed buried. Could the Russian Empire have deliberately absorbed or erased Tartaria's existence? And if so, why? To understand this, you have to consider the expansion of Russia in the 16th and 17th centuries. The empire was growing rapidly eastward, pushing into Siberia and beyond. In doing so, they absorbed territories that were once labeled as Tartaria on European maps. Now, from a purely geopolitical standpoint, it makes sense. Conquerors often rewrite history to emphasize their power and minimize the importance of the people they've overtaken. But some argue that this goes beyond mere historical rewriting. It was an active erasure of Tartaria's identity. One compelling piece of this puzzle is the Russian tendency to adopt Tartarian architecture while simultaneously ignoring its origins. You might recognize some of the ornate buildings in Siberia and Far Eastern Russia. They look surprisingly similar to what enthusiasts describe as Tartarian structures. Massive domes, intricate brickwork, and fortress-like designs appear in areas that were supposedly under Russian control shortly after Tartaria's disappearance. Was this simply architectural influence, or a subtle claim of ownership over Tartarian legacies? And then there's the odd disappearance of Tartaria from historical texts. As Russia consolidated its territories, maps began to shrink the label of Tartary, reducing it to minor regions in Central Asia or Siberia. By the 18th century, Tartaria was barely mentioned, as if the empire had been completely erased. This is particularly intriguing given the fact that Russian expansion at the time relied heavily on detailed knowledge of the land. If Tartaria truly existed as an advanced civilization, wouldn't Russian scholars have preserved some record of it if only to understand the land they now governed? Some researchers have suggested that Tartaria's erasure aligns suspiciously with Russia's imperial ambitions. By absorbing these territories and downplaying their unique histories, the Russian Empire could strengthen its own legitimacy and control over the newly acquired lands. It's almost as if the narrative was simplified. There was never a great Tartarian civilization, this land has always been ours. Whether intentional or not, this rewriting makes it incredibly difficult for historians to reconstruct Tartaria's story. But there's another layer here, one that intertwines Russia's historical fascination with the idea of giants. Across Russian folklore, there are repeated references to people of extraordinary height and giant warriors. Could these stories be echoes of Tartarian myths, preserved even as the empire itself vanished from official records? Or were they exaggerated tales, invented to instill fear and awe among local populations? Either way, the overlap between Russian folklore and Tartarian legends is striking. Then we have the tantalizing suggestion that Russian explorers in Siberia may have encountered Tartarian artifacts, massive stone structures, peculiar tools or relics of a highly advanced civilization, but chose not to document them in official histories. This brings us back to the theme of suppression. If Tartaria truly had technologies or knowledge far beyond what was known in Russia at the time, it would make sense for the empire to quietly control or hide that information rather than risk it, inspiring resistance or curiosity among the populace. Of course, not everyone buys into this idea. Mainstream historians often argue that the disappearance of Tartaria is simply a matter of semantics and cartographic confusion. They point out that Tartaria was never a cohesive political entity, and as the Russian Empire expanded, it naturally absorbed these regions, rendering the old labels obsolete. From this perspective, there's no grand conspiracy, just the evolution of maps and terminology over time. But here's the catch. Those maps that continued to depict Tartaria with detail and specificity, even after Russian expansion, challenge this explanation. If it were truly just a name, why maintain its presence on certain maps? And why were some features, like massive architectural complexes, omitted or downplayed in official Russian records? The debate continues, and like so many elements of the Tartarian story, it sits at the intersection of fact, legend, and speculation. Did Russia deliberately erase Tartaria to consolidate power, or did the empire simply absorb these lands and the history faded naturally with time? You can see why this topic draws historians and theorists into long, sometimes heated debates. Every time a new map or architectural anomaly is uncovered, it rekindles the question: was Tartaria's erasure intentional, or merely an artifact of history's chaotic progression? As you trudge deeper into this line of thought, it's hard not to feel a little unsettled. Russia's massive sweep across Asia reshaped the continent politically, culturally, and historically. And if Tartaria really did exist as an advanced civilization, its memory might have been caught in the crossfire of empire building, leaving us only fragments. A map here, a building there, and stories whispered across the tundra. Sometimes, history doesn't just forget, it gets rewritten by those in power, leaving the curious wanderer to piece together what remains. We've covered some pretty compelling ground so far, giants, maps, mysterious architecture, and the Russian connection, but let's take a moment to zoom in on something that ties it all together: the theory of lost technologies. Could the Tartarians have had access to knowledge and tools far beyond what we consider possible for their time? And if so, where did that knowledge go? The idea of forgotten technologies is a tantalizing one, especially when you start looking at certain artifacts and relics that don't quite fit with the historical timeline. Let's start with the most straightforward possibility: advanced construction techniques. As we've seen, the scale and intricacy of some Tartarian buildings suggest a level of knowledge that far exceeds what we expect from ancient peoples. Some theorists believe that the Tartarians were capable of manipulating energy, whether it was electromagnetic, geothermal, or even something more exotic, to assist in their construction projects. The sheer size of some of these buildings would have required an immense amount of labor and resources. But there's something even more curious: the precision with which these structures were built. Could the Tartarians have had access to some kind of energy manipulation that allowed them to move massive stone blocks effortlessly, without the need for cranes, ramps, or brute force? One particularly interesting example is the world's energy grids. Some researchers point to the idea that ancient civilizations, including the Tartarians, understood how to tap into the natural energy of the Earth itself, something that modern civilizations are only now beginning to experiment with. Could the massive stone buildings and their precise construction techniques have been part of a system designed to harness and channel energy? It's a fascinating theory, especially when you consider the fact that many of these structures, like temples and sacred sites, are often aligned with celestial bodies or geographical features. Was this mere superstition, or did the people of Tartaria know something that has been lost to modern science? Then, of course, there's the question of lost technologies in everyday life. Were the Tartarians using devices or tools that are entirely unknown to us? The discovery of ancient objects that seem far ahead of their time has fueled this speculation. Items like perfectly crafted metal objects, strange devices with no clear purpose, and tools that appear to have been designed with an advanced understanding of materials and mechanics. These are the kinds of things that raise eyebrows. Some suggest that these objects were relics of an ancient technology that we've either forgotten or misinterpreted, but others believe these tools were part of a much grander system of knowledge that was suppressed or destroyed after the collapse of Tartaria. Consider the mysterious underground cities that we've touched on. Many of these cities are thought to have been built by civilizations long before the Tartarians ever arrived. Yet the knowledge to create such intricate, sprawling subterranean networks seems to have been passed down through the ages. How did ancient peoples know to build cities beneath the earth? And how did they do so with such precision? Could this reflect an understanding of energy and environmental control, perhaps even techniques that harness the Earth's natural resources in a way that we've since forgotten? And then there's the notion of free energy. Could the Tartarians have discovered ways to extract energy from natural sources, such as the Earth's magnetic field, or even harnessed some form of electromagnetic energy? This might sound like science fiction, but there are those who believe that ancient civilizations, including Tartaria, had access to these technologies. Some of the artifacts associated with Tartaria, such as strange coils or energy-capturing devices, seem to hint at an understanding of energy that was far ahead of its time. There are even reports of mysterious, glowing stones or objects that were found in the region. Could they have been used for some form of energy storage or transmission? Of course, we're not just talking about techno-fantasy here. There are legitimate examples of ancient devices that seem out of place for their era. For instance, the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek analog computer used to predict astronomical positions, is considered an example of technology that shouldn't have existed at that time. If such devices were created thousands of years ago, could the Tartarians have had access to even more advanced tools, which have simply not survived the passage of time? Then there's the idea of hidden knowledge, passed down through secret societies or suppressed by ruling empires. It's possible that the technologies used by the Tartarians were intentionally hidden from the public, either to prevent their misuse or to maintain control over the population. After all, if you had access to a technology that could control energy or manipulate the environment, wouldn't you want to keep it a secret? This theory fits with the idea that powerful elites might have had access to knowledge that was deliberately kept from the masses. As Tartaria's influence waned and the empire crumbled, could this knowledge have been lost or locked away, perhaps in forgotten libraries or concealed in plain sight? The more you look into the lost technologies of Tartaria, the more questions arise. Were these technologies the result of a greater, now lost civilization that predated the Tartarians? Or did the Tartarians themselves develop these advancements? And if so, where did they go? As with most aspects of Tartarian history, the theories are vast and diverse, and the answers remain elusive. What we do know is that these lost technologies, whether real or imagined, hold the potential to completely rewrite our understanding of ancient history. It's easy to dismiss these theories as conspiracy or fantasy. After all, we have very little concrete evidence to support the idea that Tartaria possessed anything beyond what we already know about the region. But sometimes, the strangest questions are the ones worth pursuing. What if the truth about Tartaria and its technologies is hidden in plain sight? What if the answers are buried in the remnants of lost civilizations, waiting to be uncovered by the right person with the right mindset? As you continue to ponder these questions, one thing becomes clear. Tartaria isn't just a lost empire, it's a reminder of how much we still don't know about the past. And perhaps, just perhaps, there's more to our history than we've been taught. As we dig deeper into the mystery of Tartaria, we come to an essential, often overlooked question. Why haven't we found more evidence? Given the claims of a vast, advanced civilization with powerful technologies and remarkable architecture, it seems odd that so little has been left behind. If Tartaria was as powerful and influential as some believe, why do its remnants seem so fleeting and fragmented? Let's tackle this dilemma from a few different angles and explore some compelling theories that might shed light on the missing evidence. First, there's the natural decay of time. Ancient civilizations, even those with seemingly advanced technologies, often left behind few traces due to the simple passage of time. Wood rots, organic materials decay, and structures made from perishable materials fade away. Even stone buildings, which may seem impervious to the ravages of time, are not immune to the forces of weather and erosion. Take a look at the ruins of ancient Rome or Greece, where many of the most iconic structures were originally far more intricate and complete than what we see today. Over centuries, these buildings crumbled, and much of their grandeur faded from the record. But here's where things get interesting. Tartaria was not just any civilization, it was purportedly advanced in ways that could leave behind more than just stone structures. Could it be that their technologies allowed them to create materials or objects that simply don't decay in the way we understand? Could the Tartarians have possessed knowledge of preservation techniques that allowed their creations to survive in ways modern archaeologists haven't yet considered? Some researchers believe that Tartaria's architecture was not only advanced but also built to last, using materials that would withstand time better than the building materials of other ancient civilizations. Perhaps they used materials that were both durable and self-repairing, capable of maintaining their form for millennia. Could such materials have been based on forgotten knowledge? Then, we arrive at another intriguing theory: the intentional destruction or concealment of evidence. This theory posits that the Tartarians didn't just fade into obscurity due to natural processes, they were actively erased from history. If Tartaria was as powerful as some suggest, it stands to reason that other rising powers would have had a vested interest in erasing its memory. After all, what better way to solidify your own empire's dominance than by erasing the memory of the civilization you just conquered? The Russian Empire, which absorbed much of Tartaria, is often cited as a prime candidate for such a cover-up. According to this theory, Russia not only absorbed Tartaria's lands but also systematically destroyed or buried its history. This idea is supported by the fact that many ancient civilizations, particularly those in the path of empires like Russia or China, experienced cultural suppression and historical erasure. It's not hard to imagine that the Russian Empire, in its expansion across Siberia, might have sought to distance itself from the legacy of Tartaria, either because it feared the power of its knowledge or because it wished to claim the territories and resources for itself. What better way to do so than by erasing the civilization's traces from the official historical narrative? If this was the case, it's not just the physical evidence that was removed, it's the memory of Tartaria itself that was systematically scrubbed from historical records. But the theory of intentional erasure doesn't stop with Russia. Some theorists believe that global powers, both ancient and modern, have conspired to suppress the existence of advanced civilizations like Tartaria, from secret societies to the control of mainstream historical narratives. The idea is that certain knowledge has been deliberately hidden from the public eye, perhaps to maintain control over global politics or technology. Could it be that the evidence of Tartaria's grandeur was removed to prevent a rediscovery of its lost technologies that could challenge the status quo of modern society? If such knowledge existed, could it threaten the global power structures that are built on the current state of technological understanding? This theory isn't just speculative. It's grounded in the historical precedent of historical revisionism, where empires or ruling elites have actively manipulated the past to serve their purposes. Another possibility is that the evidence was simply lost in time and we're still waiting to rediscover it. Sometimes, civilizations fall, and their remnants are buried under layers of dirt, sand, and history. Modern archaeology hasn't explored every inch of the Earth, especially in remote regions like Siberia, Mongolia, and Central Asia. It's possible that, just as we're uncovering new tombs in Egypt or ancient cities in the Amazon, there are hidden Tartarian cities or artifacts waiting to be unearthed. Some suggest that recent findings, like the discovery of the city of Archaim in Russia, might be just the tip of the iceberg, and that deeper exploration could reveal even more evidence of Tartaria's existence. Perhaps, like many ancient civilizations, Tartaria's true remains are simply waiting to be found by future generations of explorers and archaeologists. In the end, the missing evidence of Tartaria is a mystery, wrapped in layers of time, politics, and speculation. Whether the truth lies in lost technology, intentional erasure, or the simple ravages of time, we can't help but wonder what's out there, still buried beneath the earth, waiting for someone to uncover it. Is Tartaria truly gone, lost to history, or is it merely hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right time to reveal itself? What's certain is that the search for Tartaria's lost evidence will continue, as new discoveries, theories, and technologies allow us to dig deeper into the past. Perhaps, one day, we'll uncover the truth and reveal a civilization far more advanced than we ever imagined. Until then, the mystery remains, and with it, the question of what we still don't know about our own history. By now, you've likely noticed that the story of Tartaria is not just about a single lost civilization. It's also about the tangled web of myths, legends, and historical reinterpretation that surrounds it. One of the most enduring aspects of Tartarian history, whether it's real or imagined, is the way it intertwines with global folklore. As we venture into the more mythological aspects of the Tartarian narrative, we encounter a striking number of similarities with other ancient cultures, each with their own stories of giant beings, advanced technologies, and great empires lost to time. Take, for example, the giants. We've already touched on the fact that many Tartarian legends speak of beings of extraordinary size, but the idea of giants is not unique to this civilization. In fact, the concept of giants spans across almost every major culture, from the biblical Nephilim to the Norse Jotnar, and even the indigenous peoples of North America, who have tales of giant ancestors. In many cultures, giants were seen as both creators and destroyers, shaping the landscape or being involved in catastrophic battles with gods or other powerful beings. Could it be that the legends of Tartarian giants were influenced by these widespread myths? Or is it possible that they represent a shared memory of a lost civilization, one that existed on a scale far beyond what we imagine? The idea that giants might have existed is not just relegated to mythological texts. In some cases, physical evidence seems to support it. Across the globe, there have been reported discoveries of massive skeletons, often described as being far larger than humanly possible. These discoveries, if they are to be believed, might suggest that a civilization of giants, or at least people of extraordinary size, once existed. Some of these skeletal remains have been found in regions associated with Tartaria, raising even more questions about the empire's history and its inhabitants. Could these giant bones be evidence of the same advanced civilization that allegedly built the monumental structures we discussed earlier? But giants aren't the only common thread in global folklore that ties into the Tartarian mythos. Another prevalent theme in many ancient cultures is the idea of advanced, lost technologies. Stories of ancient civilizations with knowledge of electricity, free energy, and powerful weapons are scattered across the globe, from the Vimanas in India to the Atlanteans of Greek myth. The Tartarians, according to some theories, may have been another such civilization, one with the knowledge and technology to manipulate natural forces and build massive structures without the aid of modern tools. The similarities between these tales raise an interesting question. Was there a universal knowledge shared by ancient civilizations, one that was passed down and adapted through different cultures? Or are these stories simply independent myths that happen to share similar themes? In some ways, the mythology surrounding Tartaria feels like a reflection of human longing, a longing for something greater than what we currently know. The idea that an advanced civilization once existed, with technologies and knowledge that surpass anything we have today, speaks to a deep-seated desire for rediscovery. After all, who wouldn't want to uncover the secrets of a lost world, to unlock the mysteries of ancient technologies that could change the course of history? But beyond the search for lost technologies lies another layer of Tartarian folklore, the idea of cosmic knowledge. Many of the legends surrounding the Tartarians involve themes of cosmic alignment, celestial wisdom, and a deep understanding of the stars and planets. This idea aligns with the ancient knowledge that other civilizations, such as the Egyptians and the Maya, are thought to have had an understanding of celestial movements and cosmic cycles that went far beyond what should have been possible for their time. The idea that Tartaria possessed similar knowledge raises fascinating questions. Could the Tartarians have built their structures with astrological significance, aligning them with the stars or using them as a form of cosmic communication? Interestingly, the connection between Tartaria and celestial phenomena isn't just confined to mythology. Some theorists point to the alignment of certain Tartarian ruins, which appear to correspond with astrological events such as equinoxes and solstices. In this light, the buildings and cities of Tartaria may not have been built just for practical purposes, but also as observatories or temples of celestial worship, designed to tap into cosmic forces. This opens up a whole new realm of speculation about what kind of knowledge the Tartarians could have had and how they may have used it. But the mythology and folklore surrounding Tartaria isn't just about giants and celestial knowledge. It also involves the notion of hidden realms, places that exist outside of ordinary perception, where the laws of physics and time behave differently. This idea resonates with stories of underground cities, lost worlds, and parallel dimensions that exist in folklore around the world. Could Tartaria's ultimate collapse have been tied to the idea of a hidden world, one that could only be accessed by those with the right knowledge or abilities? And if so, is it possible that Tartaria's knowledge and power didn't just fade away with the fall of the empire, but instead slipped into another realm, waiting for the right moment to return? The idea of Tartaria as a lost civilization of giants or cosmic beings taps into deep human myths, ones that speak to our fascination with lost worlds and advanced technologies. The more we explore these myths, the more we begin to see Tartaria not just as a forgotten empire, but as a reflection of human dreams and fears, a civilization that might have once stood at the threshold of a new era of understanding, only to be lost to time. And as we dig deeper into the stories, we can't help but wonder, are we chasing the remnants of a myth, or the echoes of something far greater? The deeper we go into the mystery of Tartaria, the more we realize how it's intertwined with not just history, but also the forgotten narratives of humanity itself. The topic of lost empires brings with it an unsettling question. If Tartaria was so advanced, why is there no solid record of its downfall? Unlike many ancient civilizations whose decline is well documented, Tartaria seems to have vanished without a trace, at least according to conventional history. There are no detailed records of wars, no final battles, no widespread accounts of what led to the empire's sudden disappearance. This gap in the historical record only adds fuel to the fire of Tartarian theories, sparking ideas of intentional obfuscation or catastrophic events that erased the empire from memory. Let's start with the idea of historical manipulation. Throughout history, empires have gone to great lengths to control the narrative of their rise and fall. It's not unheard of for conquerors to rewrite history in their favor, either to legitimize their rule or to suppress the knowledge of past empires that might have posed a threat to their dominance. Could it be that the story of Tartaria's collapse was deliberately erased or altered by the succeeding powers? After all, an empire as vast and seemingly powerful as Tartaria could have posed a major threat to the emerging Russian Empire, and the easiest way to neutralize that threat would be to erase it from the historical record entirely. The most straightforward theory here is that after Russia expanded into Tartarian territories, they systematically destroyed any remaining traces of the empire, suppressing any knowledge that might challenge their own legitimacy. We've seen this before in history, empire builders erasing or assimilating the history of those they conquer. This would explain why so little is known about the final days of Tartaria. If the ruling powers at the time had an interest in suppressing the existence of such a mighty civilization, they would have had every reason to hide the details of its collapse. But the lack of records is not the only reason Tartaria's fall is so mysterious. There are also accounts of cataclysmic events, possibly natural disasters, or even a cosmic event that might have led to the empire's sudden disappearance. One such theory involves a global flood or cataclysmic weather event that wiped out not just Tartaria, but other civilizations as well. Many ancient cultures speak of great floods, and some suggest that the evidence for such an event is hidden in the geological record. The end of Tartaria, in this theory, could be part of a much larger event that affected the entire planet. Some enthusiasts propose that the destruction of Tartaria wasn't just a flood, but a massive environmental shift that was caused by an astronomical or cosmic event. This could involve everything from comet impacts to the shifting of the Earth's magnetic poles, causing massive climate upheaval. If the Tartarians were as advanced as some theorists believe, they might have had the technology or knowledge to predict such events, or even attempt to survive them. But no matter how they may have tried to protect themselves, the scale of the catastrophe would have been beyond their control. Then there's the electromagnetic theory. Some believe that the decline of Tartaria could be linked to the collapse of an electromagnetic grid, a network of energy sources and technological devices that the Tartarians used to power their advanced civilization. According to this theory, Tartaria was not just an empire, it was a highly advanced civilization that tapped into Earth's natural energies, perhaps even manipulating the Earth's magnetic fields. The collapse of this energy grid could have led to the sudden fall of the empire, leaving no survivors to tell the tale. The absence of these technologies after the collapse would explain why there's so little trace of Tartaria today. If they were using technologies beyond our understanding, it's possible that the remnants of that technology were buried or lost in the collapse. In any case, the fact that no final chapter of Tartarian history exists, no official account of its fall, creates an aura of mystery that continues to attract researchers, theorists, and conspiracy enthusiasts. Why was there no last stand? No grand battle that marked the empire's downfall? Why do the records go silent just as the empire appears to have reached the peak of its power? It's a question that haunts the narrative of Tartaria, one that makes us question the very structure of historical records and the stories they tell. But maybe we've been looking at the collapse of Tartaria the wrong way. Perhaps its disappearance wasn't so much a dramatic event as a gradual erasure, a slow fade into obscurity. As Russia and other powers encroached on the Tartarian territories, the civilization could have simply disintegrated into smaller tribes and groups, all too eager to abandon their once great empire in the face of overwhelming external pressures. The idea that a once great empire could quietly fade away, leaving behind nothing but ruins, is a sobering thought. Perhaps there was no cataclysmic event, just the steady march of time, war, and assimilation, slowly erasing the legacy of Tartaria from the map. Another factor to consider is that Tartaria's empire might have been inherently unstable, based on the combination of diverse cultures and peoples. If the empire was as large and sprawling as some suggest, it may have been plagued by internal divisions that eventually led to its disintegration. The idea that Tartaria was a collection of loosely connected tribes and states, rather than a unified empire, is supported by some of the maps we've already examined. The fall of such an empire could have been the result of a natural fragmentation, where internal strife or external pressure caused the once powerful empire to break apart and lose its former glory. In the end, the question of why there are no records of Tartaria's collapse may never be answered definitively. Whether it was the result of deliberate suppression, a cosmic disaster, or a gradual decline, the fact remains that the empire's final days remain one of the greatest mysteries in human history. And as we look to the future, the story of Tartaria may continue to unfold, revealing more clues and secrets buried deep in the earth, waiting to be discovered. By now, you've probably noticed that the mystery of Tartaria isn't just about grand historical questions, it's also about the way the empire has evolved in the collective imagination. Tartaria has become more than just an ancient civilization. It has transformed into a mythic archetype, a symbol of a lost, idealized golden age. But how did this once-forgotten empire go from being a mere footnote in history to a massive focal point for theories, conspiracies, and pop culture? What is it about Tartaria that keeps drawing us back? Even as the historical evidence seems so elusive, let's start with the rise of alternative history and the proliferation of Tartarian ideas in the modern world. You see, for most of recorded history, Tartaria was barely mentioned. After its territories were absorbed into the Russian Empire, the concept of Tartaria seemed to fade into obscurity. But in the past century, and especially with the advent of the internet, the idea of Tartaria has resurfaced stronger, stranger, and more widespread than ever. Social media platforms, blogs, YouTube channels, and forums have become hotbeds for Tartarian theories, each new generation adding its own spin to the tale. So what happened? How did this obscure name come to symbolize everything from giant civilizations to lost technologies to hidden knowledge? One factor is the growing interest in alternative history itself. Over the past few decades, many people have grown disillusioned with mainstream historical narratives, whether it's because of political reasons, institutional distrust, or the desire for a more exciting story. Many have sought out alternate explanations for the events of the past. This desire for alternative history has fueled a surge in interest in forgotten civilizations, with Tartaria taking center stage. It represents the perfect mix of mystery, grandeur, and, yes, a little bit of conspiracy, everything that captures the modern imagination. Then, there's the rise of mystery culture. The internet has made it easier than ever to share and amplify alternative ideas, and people love a good mystery. From ancient pyramids to UFOs to secret societies, there's no shortage of obscure topics to explore. But Tartaria fits in particularly well. The idea of an entire empire that has disappeared from the historical record, leaving behind only fragmented clues, taps into a deep-seated cultural fascination with the unexplained. It offers a tantalizing narrative. What if everything we know about history is wrong? What if there's an entire chapter we missed, buried under layers of time, political manipulation, and scholarly neglect? But there's also a romanticized element to the story of Tartaria. In many ways, the Tartarians have become the ultimate idealized lost civilization, a shining example of what might have been. Modern theorists often depict them as not only technologically advanced, but also spiritually enlightened, harmonizing with nature and the cosmos. This version of Tartaria, as an almost utopian society, has a powerful appeal. It represents everything that modern society seems to lack: wisdom, peace, and an understanding of the natural world that goes far beyond our current technological capabilities. It's no surprise that many see the Tartarians as a lost civilization that could teach us something profound about our own society, if only we could rediscover their secrets. In the realm of conspiracy theories, Tartaria has also taken on a life of its own. For some, the empire's disappearance represents more than just a historical gap. It's evidence of an intentional cover-up by powerful forces who wanted to keep the truth hidden. This narrative appeals to those who believe that the official history of the world is a constructed, controlled story, one designed to maintain the status quo and suppress alternative ideas. Tartaria fits perfectly into this worldview, with its supposed advanced technology, mysterious erasure, and the possibility that its fall was engineered by external powers. Moreover, the Tartarian mystery doesn't just live on in alternative history circles. It's begun to infiltrate mainstream culture in ways both subtle and overt. If you look closely at pop culture, you'll see references to lost civilizations, secret knowledge, and advanced technologies popping up everywhere, whether it's in movies, video games, or novels. The idea of a hidden history is a popular trope. While not all of these works directly reference Tartaria, they often carry the same themes: civilizations of unimaginable power and wisdom that were erased from history, leaving only traces behind. In some ways, Tartaria has even become a modern myth, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the world and our place in it. It represents our collective desire for a more mysterious, magical past, one in which humanity was closer to nature, to the stars, and to hidden knowledge. The allure of this myth is undeniable. After all, who wouldn't want to believe in a civilization that transcended time and space, leaving behind only cryptic clues for us to unravel? But there's something deeper at play here as well. The rise of Tartaria as a mythic symbol also coincides with a growing sense of disillusionment with modern society. The rapid pace of technological change, environmental destruction, and political turmoil has left many people longing for a simpler, more enlightened time. The myth of Tartaria offers an escape, an idealized past in which humanity lived in harmony with the earth, unlocked the secrets of the universe, and created a civilization that was more advanced than ours. It's the ultimate antidote to the chaos and uncertainty of the present. This romanticized, idealized vision of Tartaria is especially appealing to those who feel disconnected from the world today. The idea of a golden age that existed long before our current society serves as a kind of beacon, something to aspire to, something to recover. In a way, it's as if we're searching for a past that we've lost, one that might hold the key to a better future. And in this search, Tartaria represents both a mystery to be solved and a vision of a utopia that could have been. So, why does Tartaria continue to captivate us? Because it embodies the mystery of the unknown, the part of history that is hidden, the parts of the past that are buried beneath layers of time, politics, and societal change. It appeals to our collective curiosity, our need for something larger than ourselves. Whether or not Tartaria was an actual empire, it represents something deeper, the human desire to believe in something greater, a hope for a better, more advanced future. And maybe, just maybe, the search for Tartaria is really the search for ourselves. As we continue to unravel the threads of the Tartarian mystery, one of the most persistent questions is the role of ancient maps in piecing together this puzzle. Maps, as you know, are more than just navigational tools. They're records of how we viewed the world at a particular time. And when it comes to Tartaria, some of the most curious maps seem to show not just an empire, but an entire world different from the one we know today. These maps, many of which predate modern cartography, depict a vast and mysterious region labeled Tartary, a term that doesn't quite fit into our standard understanding of geographical boundaries. What's particularly fascinating about these maps is the consistency with which Tartaria appears. In centuries-old European and Asian maps, Tartaria is often shown as a massive region stretching across vast portions of Asia, from the Pacific coast all the way to the heart of Europe. These maps don't just show a small kingdom or city-state. They show an empire of unimaginable scale, one that would rival the greatest civilizations in history. And yet, despite its vastness and prominence on early maps, there's no definitive record of what the empire actually looked like. In some instances, Tartary even appears to be marked in two distinct regions, one that is central to Asia and another in the far reaches of Siberia and Mongolia. So, what's going on here? Some theorists propose that these maps are evidence of a lost civilization, one that was so significant, so widespread, that its legacy somehow persisted in global cartography, long after its political and cultural disappearance. In these early maps, Tartary isn't just a vague, mythical place, it's a clearly defined area, with geographical features and political boundaries. This raises an intriguing question. Could these maps reflect a real civilization that once existed across the vast steppes of Asia and Europe, only to be erased from history? There's another layer to this mystery when you look at the changes in map-making over time. As we move through history, we see a strange shift in the depiction of Tartary. Early maps from the 16th and 17th centuries show it as a large and powerful region, while later maps from the 18th and 19th centuries begin to shrink it, or even erase it altogether. In some cases, the name Tartary vanishes entirely, replaced with vague references to other regions like Russia or Central Asia. What's especially odd about this shift is that, during this period, explorers and cartographers were actively mapping parts of the world that had been previously unknown. Why, then, would they remove or reduce the size of Tartary, especially when new evidence about the region was being uncovered? This brings us to the idea of intentional historical revisionism. Could the disappearance of Tartary from maps be part of a deliberate effort to erase the memory of an ancient and advanced civilization? Historians often argue that this is a natural part of how the world changes. New empires rise, old ones fall, and maps are updated to reflect new geopolitical realities. But given the prominence of Tartary on earlier maps, it's hard to ignore the possibility that its eventual disappearance from maps wasn't just a coincidence. Some even suggest that the Russian Empire, with its expansion into Tartarian territories, might have played a role in the erasure of Tartary's historical footprint. By absorbing the lands of Tartaria and consolidating power, Russia may have sought to rewrite the map, and, with it, the history of the region. For conspiracy enthusiasts, this theory adds another layer of intrigue. Could the Russian Empire, or other rising powers, have deliberately sought to erase the name of Tartaria, to suppress knowledge of its advanced technologies, architecture, and culture? After all, if Tartaria was indeed as advanced as some suggest, it could pose a direct challenge to the legitimacy of newly formed empires that claimed dominion over the same territories. By removing Tartary from maps and historical records, the new powers could easily claim ownership of the lands, silencing any narratives that might suggest a more complex or contested past. But not everyone agrees with this theory. Many historians argue that the term Tartary itself was a vague catch-all label used by Europeans to refer to the unknown and often mysterious lands of the East. It wasn't a single unified empire, but rather a region populated by a variety of different cultures and peoples. From this perspective, the shrinking of Tartary on maps simply reflects the natural evolution of geography and political boundaries over time. As Russia expanded its territories and Central Asia became more clearly understood, the label Tartary was replaced with more specific terms, such as Siberia or Mongolia. This explanation fits with the idea that the disappearance of Tartary from maps wasn't a grand conspiracy, but rather a product of changing political realities and the growing sophistication of map-making. However, even if the revisionist theory doesn't hold up, the role of maps in shaping our understanding of history is undeniable. Maps are more than just tools for navigation, they are cultural documents, offering a glimpse into how people in the past viewed the world. And when you look at the old maps that feature Tartary, it's impossible not to wonder, what did these cartographers know? What was going on in the world at the time that led them to include Tartaria as a major feature of their maps? Was it a place of myth? Or was it the memory of something very real, a vast empire that spanned continents and left behind only whispers in the wind? And then, there's the intriguing possibility that Tartary was not only a physical empire, but also a place of great mystical significance. Some maps, particularly those made by ancient civilizations, hint at locations of spiritual importance, places believed to be aligned with celestial forces or the cosmos. Could Tartaria have been considered one of these sacred spaces, and its presence on early maps a marker of something more than just political boundaries? The more you look at these ancient maps, the more questions emerge, and the more it becomes clear that Tartaria's legacy is something far more complex than a simple geographic region. In the end, the story of Tartaria and its mysterious disappearance from maps remains an enigma, one that continues to spark debate, speculation, and curiosity. Whether it was erased through deliberate manipulation or faded into obscurity naturally, the fact remains that Tartary's role in world history is far from clear. And as we look to the future, we may find that the ancient maps we rely on today are still hiding more secrets than we ever imagined. As we press forward, another key aspect of the Tartarian mystery involves the idea of ancient technologies, tools, and machines that don't quite fit with what we believe to be possible for their time. If Tartaria was indeed a thriving, advanced civilization, the question arises, what kind of technologies did they possess? And just as importantly, why did these technologies seemingly vanish after the collapse of the empire? One of the most intriguing aspects of this theory is that it challenges our entire understanding of technological development. Let's begin with the most widely discussed theory: the idea that the Tartarians had access to free energy, a form of energy that could be harnessed without the need for traditional fuel sources like coal or oil. Free energy is a concept that has captivated inventors, scientists, and conspiracy theorists for centuries, with figures like Nikola Tesla even rumored to have discovered ways to tap into this invisible source of power. In the case of Tartaria, the theory suggests that the civilization may have had the knowledge to tap into the Earth's magnetic fields, geothermal energy, or even electromagnetic waves to create vast, self-sustaining power grids. What's particularly intriguing about this theory is the presence of strange artifacts that have been found in the regions once occupied by Tartaria, objects that don't seem to fit into the historical timeline. Items like coils, strange copper wires, and large energy harnessing devices have been discovered in these areas, with some researchers suggesting they may have been used for exactly the kinds of free energy systems that the Tartarians were believed to have employed. Some even suggest that the famous star forts, large, star-shaped military forts that dot the landscape in places once connected to Tartaria, were not just defensive structures, but also power plants or energy stations designed to harness and distribute these advanced energy sources. If the Tartarians had access to free energy, it raises an even more tantalizing question. How did they use it? Imagine cities powered not by fossil fuels, but by energy drawn directly from the environment around them. Tartarian cities could have been equipped with floating cities, self-sustaining structures, and technologies that seem straight out of science fiction. What if the energy harnessed by the Tartarians wasn't just used for practical purposes, but also to manipulate the environment, control the weather, or even power devices that could defy gravity? These ideas might sound fantastical, but it's worth considering that ancient civilizations, even those we consider primitive, often had a deep connection to the natural world. Could the Tartarians have understood how to work with natural forces in a way we're only beginning to explore? This theory ties into the concept of advanced construction techniques as well. It's not just the grand scale of Tartarian architecture that's impressive, it's the materials that were used. Some of the buildings and structures in regions once associated with Tartaria exhibit a quality of craftsmanship and durability that's hard to explain with the tools of the time. Giant stone blocks, some weighing many tons, were cut with an almost unbelievable precision, suggesting the use of tools and technologies far beyond what we understand to be available at the time. Could the Tartarians have used energy manipulation to lift and move these stones with ease, using advanced technology to defy the limitations of manual labor and traditional construction methods? But the idea of free energy doesn't just apply to buildings and power sources, it could also explain the presence of strange artifacts that don't seem to fit with historical technology. Many Tartarian relics, such as metal objects, ornate tools, and highly detailed sculptures, suggest a level of craftsmanship that seems almost futuristic. Some believe that these objects were not just works of art, but practical tools powered by a now lost energy source. Could these artifacts have been part of a larger technological system that used electromagnetic fields to perform tasks far beyond our current capabilities? And it's not just energy that the Tartarians may have had access to. Some theorists suggest that they were also in possession of ancient machines, devices capable of performing feats that seem impossible by today's standards. Some propose that Tartarians had machines capable of creating energy shields, gravity manipulation, or even time manipulation. These machines, if they existed, would represent a fundamental shift in our understanding of physics. Could the Tartarians have tapped into the secrets of the universe in ways we are only now beginning to understand? And if so, what happened to this knowledge? Could it have been hidden, suppressed, or even lost during the collapse of the empire? Now, let's address the most obvious question. Why haven't we found these technologies today? If the Tartarians possessed such advanced knowledge, why isn't there more evidence? One possibility is that the knowledge was deliberately hidden, perhaps by those who sought to control it, just as some modern-day powers suppress certain forms of knowledge or technology. It's conceivable that the collapse of Tartaria was engineered to prevent this advanced knowledge from spreading. After all, what's more dangerous than a civilization that can control natural forces, manipulate the environment, and harness unlimited energy? Those who succeeded Tartaria may have had every reason to erase the knowledge and prevent others from accessing it. Another possibility is that the technologies were simply lost in the collapse. When Tartaria fell, it may have taken with it not just political power, but scientific knowledge as well. The knowledge of free energy, advanced construction techniques, and other groundbreaking technologies may have been passed down through generations, only to be forgotten or corrupted over time. As we've seen with other ancient civilizations, knowledge is fragile, and entire libraries, books, and records can be lost in the blink of an eye. The fall of Tartaria might have been so catastrophic that the knowledge was buried, hidden away, or simply scattered and lost forever. As we consider the possibility of ancient technologies, we're left with a profound question. Could we, as a modern society, rediscover this lost knowledge? Could the evidence be buried in the remnants of Tartaria's great cities, waiting to be uncovered by a future generation of explorers? Perhaps the technology of the past holds the key to a better future, one that draws from the ancient knowledge of civilizations like Tartaria, rather than constantly striving to reinvent the wheel. If we're able to unlock the secrets of free energy, advanced construction techniques, or even the manipulation of natural forces, could we chart a new course for humanity? The mystery of Tartaria's ancient technologies is far from solved, but one thing is clear. The idea that there was once a civilization with the power to manipulate the very forces of nature challenges everything we think we know about human history. And as long as the mystery persists, the search for these lost technologies will continue to inspire those who believe that we might be on the brink of rediscovering a forgotten chapter of our past. At the heart of the mystery surrounding Tartaria lies a recurring theme: the unexplained architecture that seems to defy the limits of the technologies and materials available at the time. So, let's take a closer look at the architectural wonders attributed to Tartaria, specifically the buildings and structures that some say were far too advanced for their era. From massive stone buildings and gigantic columns to intricate carvings and enormous arches, the structures of Tartaria, or the territories believed to have been part of it, raise more questions than they answer. Why, for example, do these buildings seem to mirror ancient structures that exist across the world, despite the civilizations in question being seemingly disconnected? One of the most striking elements of Tartarian architecture is the sheer scale of its buildings. According to many who study the remnants of Tartarian civilization, the architecture doesn't just appear grand, it seems purposefully built to convey an overwhelming sense of power and permanence. The size and proportions of many Tartarian structures are almost incomprehensible, leading some researchers to suggest that the builders must have possessed tools and methods that have been lost to time. In particular, the massive stone blocks used in Tartarian architecture are often cited as evidence of advanced techniques that couldn't possibly have been available to the civilizations we know. How could such large, perfectly cut blocks have been moved and placed with such precision? And if Tartaria was indeed an empire spread across Asia and beyond, what kind of organizational and technological advancements would have been necessary to build such monuments? But the mystery deepens when you consider the style of the architecture. The intricate Baroque and neoclassical designs seen in these structures look remarkably similar to buildings constructed much later, particularly in Europe. This resemblance has led some to propose that the Tartarians may have had access to architectural knowledge that we've only rediscovered in more recent centuries. Could the design principles that govern Tartarian structures have been passed down through time, influencing the development of architecture in places like Europe? Or were these architectural techniques simply rediscovered independently by later civilizations? Another curious aspect of the architecture attributed to Tartaria is its ubiquity across the vast lands of Asia and Europe. While each civilization has its own distinct style of construction, Tartarian structures show remarkable consistency in design. Whether we're looking at buildings in Siberia, Central Asia, or Europe, the same elements keep appearing: towering columns, vast arches, and grandiose facades. Some theorists even suggest that these structures might have once formed an interconnected network of power centers, each designed with a specific purpose, like energy generation, astronomical observation, or even as portals to another dimension. Could these architectural wonders have served purposes we're only beginning to understand? Theories about the functionality of these structures are as varied as the designs themselves. Some believe the grand buildings of Tartaria were not just monuments to the empire's power, but also functional devices designed to harness the natural forces of the earth. The massive stone blocks and intricate carvings might not only have been artistic, they could have served as a kind of energy conductor, drawing on the Earth's natural magnetic fields or tapping into cosmic energy. This theory draws parallels to the pyramids of Egypt and other ancient wonders, which many believe were built not just as tombs or temples, but as energy-generating machines. Could Tartaria's architecture have been built with similar intent, harnessing natural forces to power their cities or protect their people? But then there's the undeniable resemblance between the Tartarian structures and those of civilizations that supposedly didn't have the same technological capabilities. Ancient ruins from around the world, such as the pyramids in Egypt, the temples of South America, and the megalithic structures of Europe, all share certain design similarities with Tartarian architecture. This raises the fascinating question: were these civilizations connected? Were they all part of a larger, forgotten network of advanced cultures, possibly even the remnants of a once unified empire like Tartaria? The connection between Tartarian architecture and other ancient wonders has led some researchers to suggest the possibility of an ancient global network, a universal civilization that existed long before the rise of the ancient empires we know. The similarities between Tartarian structures and those of other ancient cultures could be evidence that these civilizations shared not just architectural styles, but also technological knowledge. Some even believe that Tartaria was the center of this ancient global network, its culture and technologies influencing the rise of other civilizations across the world. Another part of the mystery is the condition of these structures. Many of the ruins associated with Tartaria show signs of advanced craftsmanship, but they also display features that suggest they've been abandoned or deliberately destroyed. Why would a civilization that could build such magnificent structures leave them to decay or collapse? Some theorists believe that the fall of Tartaria was so sudden and catastrophic that its once great cities were left in ruins, with their advanced technologies and knowledge lost forever. Others speculate that the structures may have been intentionally dismantled or hidden away, perhaps to prevent later generations from rediscovering the advanced secrets they held. The star forts, those strange, star-shaped military forts scattered across former Tartarian territories, add yet another layer to this architectural mystery. While the purpose of these structures has been widely debated, some believe that the star forts were not merely defensive structures, but power plants or energy conduits. They seem to have been carefully designed to align with natural and cosmic forces, and their star-like shapes could have been a means of channeling or directing energy. Could these star forts have been part of the Tartarians' broader network of advanced infrastructure, designed to harness and control the natural world? As we look at Tartarian architecture and the extraordinary complexity of its designs, one thing becomes clear. This civilization, whether real or imagined, was capable of creating structures that still defy our understanding. The mystery of how they built these monumental structures and what purposes they served continues to spark debate and wonder. Whether the buildings were power plants, energy conductors, or simply artistic expressions of an advanced culture, they remain a testament to the capabilities of a civilization that, for reasons we may never fully understand, is no longer with us. What's fascinating about Tartarian architecture is that, while it may seem like a relic of the past, it speaks to something more universal. It's a reminder that there's more to human history than what we currently understand, more layers of mystery, more pieces to the puzzle that we've yet to uncover. Whether we can ever truly decode the secrets of Tartarian architecture or not, the beauty and scale of these structures serve as a lasting legacy, one that continues to captivate the imagination of all who seek to understand the lost world of Tartaria. As we venture deeper into the mystery of Tartaria, one element becomes impossible to ignore: the presence of giant human-like figures in the stories, legends, and even visual depictions associated with the empire. Whether through folklore, ancient art, or curious accounts from travelers and explorers, the figure of the giant appears time and time again in the Tartarian narrative. But just how real is this idea of giants, and could there be a historical kernel of truth behind these tales? The presence of these larger-than-life beings has prompted speculation that Tartaria was home to not just a technologically advanced society, but a race of giants, humans who stood much taller than we do today. The concept of giants isn't unique to Tartaria. Cultures from around the world have stories of giants woven into their mythology. From the Greek Titans to the biblical Nephilim, giant beings have long been a part of human lore. So, could the idea of giants in Tartaria be nothing more than myth and legend? Or is there something deeper at play here? Some believe that giants were not simply fantastical figures, but actual people, members of a lost civilization that existed on a scale far larger than ours. In this theory, the Tartarians are said to have been a race of giants taller, stronger, and more capable than modern humans. perhaps even endowed with special abilities. There's no shortage of curious evidence that has been presented to support the theory of giants in Tartaria. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from ancient artwork. In depictions of Tartarian cities, one often sees larger-than-life figures standing among regular-sized humans, people towering over others, their proportions far greater than what we would expect. These images, often found in old paintings, murals and engravings, show scenes of giants interacting with the environment, either towering over buildings or standing in places where their size seems impossibly out of scale, with everything around them. If these depictions are accurate, they would suggest that the people of Tartaria weren't just larger in stature, but also physically imposing, possibly even superhuman in their abilities. But the most fascinating evidence comes from archaeological discoveries, or rather, the lack of them. Many ancient human skeletons have been uncovered across the world, but there are curious accounts of giant bones being found in regions that once formed part of Tartaria. In some cases, these bones are said to have belonged to humanoid figures that were several times larger than the average human. These findings often raise more questions than answers, as the bones appear to be from individuals who were not just tall, but remarkably robust, with proportions that suggest a different kind of human anatomy altogether. What's particularly intriguing about these supposed giant remains is that they often disappear before they can be studied in detail. Stories abound of giant skeletons being found in remote locations, only for the remains to be taken away by authorities, never to be seen again. Some researchers believe that this is part of a cover-up, an attempt to suppress the evidence of giants in order to maintain the official narrative of human evolution and history. If giants once roamed the earth, it would undermine many of the accepted theories about human development and the rise of civilizations. And in a world that is often more comfortable with the idea of gradual progress, the notion of giants who might have been far more advanced than modern humans presents an uncomfortable challenge to the status quo. Beyond bones, there are also architectural features that some believe could indicate the presence of giants in Tartaria. Structures that were once thought to be built for humans are now being reinterpreted by some theorists as giant-sized accommodations. Consider, for example, the massive doorways and windows that have been found in ancient ruins. In places like Mongolia and Siberia, there are reports of doors that are far too large to be made for the average person. These oversized features have led some to suggest that they were built for giants, who may have lived in Tartarian society. But before we get too carried away, it's important to note that mainstream science has long dismissed the idea of giants. Skeptics argue that what we're looking at isn't evidence of a race of giants, but rather misinterpretations of scale and proportion in ancient artwork, or even exaggerated depictions meant to convey the power of certain figures. They also suggest that the giant bones reported by some might actually belong to prehistoric animals, such as large megafauna, rather than humans. As for the oversized architecture, this could be attributed to the size of the buildings themselves, which were often constructed on a grand scale to make a powerful statement about the civilization's dominance and grandeur. Still, it's difficult to deny that the sheer number of giant-related reports and depictions connected to Tartaria and other ancient civilizations suggests that the idea of giants isn't just the stuff of fairy tales. Whether they were real or symbolic, the figure of the giant plays a significant role in how we think about the past. Perhaps, as is often the case with ancient myths, there's a kernel of truth hidden within these fantastical tales, something that speaks to a lost memory of a civilization that existed on a much larger scale than our own. The idea that Tartaria was home to giants might sound like the plot of a fantasy novel, but it's not as far-fetched as it first appears. After all, many of the myths and legends that we now dismiss as fantasy were once believed to be true by ancient cultures. Could Tartaria's giants have been a symbol of power? Could they have represented something far more significant, such as a connection to the cosmos or an expression of the civilization's advanced knowledge and strength? Ultimately, the question of whether giants ever existed is one that challenges our assumptions about human history. It forces us to confront the possibility that the past was not, as we imagine it, a neatly ordered progression of events. Instead, it suggests that the history of humanity might be more complex and unpredictable than we could ever have guessed. Whether giants roamed the earth or not, the very idea of their existence invites us to reconsider everything we think we know about the ancient world. As we continue to explore the enigma of Tartaria, it becomes clear that the mystery of the giants is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. one that spans continents, cultures, and centuries. And though we may never find definitive proof of their existence, the idea of giants remains one of the most captivating elements of the Tartarian mythos, a reminder that there's much more to our history than meets the eye. While we've explored the tantalizing ideas surrounding the giants of Tartaria, another equally perplexing facet of the empire's mythos is its advanced infrastructure, or more specifically, the road systems, canals, and waterways that were purportedly constructed by the Tartarians. These vast networks, if the accounts are to be believed, were far more complex than anything that should have been possible for a civilization of that era. In fact, the technological sophistication implied by these structures seems to challenge our current understanding of ancient engineering. Imagine the scene. Roads stretching across vast stretches of land, perfectly paved and maintained, capable of supporting not just the transportation of goods, but entire fleets of people, animals, and even massive stone buildings that were transported piece by piece. If Tartaria truly existed in the way some theorists suggest, its infrastructure was no small feat. Some claim that the roads in Tartarian regions were not only well paved but also magically designed, functioning through unknown energy sources or with the help of advanced machinery that helped maintain them for centuries. Perhaps the most compelling part of this theory comes from reports of ancient canals, grand systems of waterways that seem to connect vast swathes of land. These canals, many of which are no longer visible but have been documented in ancient texts, are said to have been an essential part of Tartarian society. And not just any ordinary canals, some theorists suggest these waterways were built to harness natural forces, like the flow of water and energy, in ways we can only begin to understand. Could these canals have been designed with the intent to generate power, or even to manipulate the geography of the region itself? Then, there are the roads. Certain maps and historical documents suggest that Tartaria had a network of roads stretching across continents. These roads didn't just connect cities, they connected cultures, and some say they served as paths for transporting energy just as much as people or goods. This concept isn't entirely foreign to history. After all, the Silk Road connected the East and the West, creating an ancient network that facilitated the exchange of not just goods, but ideas and technologies. But what if the Tartarian roads did more than just facilitate trade? Could they have been pathways designed with a more advanced purpose, helping the empire channel and distribute energy or other unknown forces? One of the most intriguing aspects of the Tartarian infrastructure is its supposed engineering techniques. Some who study these ancient road systems point to the presence of materials that are simply too advanced for their time. Roads that are said to have been constructed with a form of paving that has lasted millennia. Materials that resist weathering and erosion in ways that no known ancient construction method should allow. Could this have been the work of a civilization that had mastered construction techniques far beyond what we know? Even more puzzling are reports of stone structures that appear to be perfectly aligned with celestial bodies, a hallmark of advanced civilizations throughout history. Could Tartaria have had an obsession with astronomy and earth energies, using their roads and canals to channel these forces? These theories suggest that Tartarian cities and infrastructure were not just built for the practical purposes of survival and communication, but were designed to interact with the very fabric of the earth itself. Think of the ancient Egyptians and their precise alignment of pyramids with the stars. What if Tartaria had a similar understanding of the earth's forces, using their roadways and canals to interact with natural and cosmic energies? There's also the mysterious phenomenon of the disappearing infrastructure. Historical records suggest that many of these advanced Tartarian roads and canals simply vanished after the empire's collapse, swallowed up by time, nature, and the rise of other empires. Some theorists suggest that this might have been a deliberate act, perhaps as part of the broader erasure of Tartaria's history. Could there have been a conscious effort to bury or destroy these impressive works to hide the evidence of the advanced civilization that built them? The mysterious disappearance of the Tartarian infrastructure adds another layer to the ongoing conspiracy theories surrounding the empire. Was there something so valuable, so powerful in these systems that it warranted their destruction? But not all theories are so conspiratorial. Some historians argue that the disappearance of Tartarian infrastructure is simply a result of the natural course of history. As civilizations rise and fall, infrastructure can often fall into disrepair or be repurposed for other uses. In the case of Tartaria, as the empire was absorbed into other powers, It's possible that the knowledge of how to maintain these sophisticated systems was lost over time. The collapse of Tartaria might have been so complete that even the engineering knowledge necessary to sustain these roads and canals disappeared, leaving only traces of the once great network behind. Yet, despite the lack of tangible evidence, the allure of Tartarian infrastructure continues to captivate those who search for hidden truths. The idea that such grand systems were created to harness energy, power civilizations, or connect the world's farthest reaches is tantalizing. It speaks to a world of forgotten knowledge, a world where cities weren't just built for practical use, but for cosmic harmony and energy manipulation. Could the remnants of these roads and canals be the key to understanding what was once possible in the distant past? Perhaps, in the right hands, the ancient designs of Tartaria's infrastructure could reveal secrets of energy generation or methods of construction that could revolutionize our world today. Whether these canals and roads were part of an ancient, lost network of power or simply well-designed transportation systems is still up for debate. However, their existence is yet another piece of the Tartarian puzzle, suggesting that the empire, whether real or imagined, had a deep understanding of engineering, energy, and connectivity that may have been far ahead of its time. And as we look to the future, the mystery of Tartaria's infrastructure continues to spark wonder and curiosity. Could these ancient roadways and canals hold the key to a better understanding of the world around us? Or were they merely the products of a great empire that has long since faded into the annals of history? Only time, and perhaps the discovery of new evidence, will reveal the truth. As we draw closer to the final chapters of our exploration into the lost empire of Tartaria, one of the most perplexing and often overlooked elements of its legacy is its mysterious disappearance. While we've explored its advanced technologies, enigmatic architecture, and even the possible existence of giants, the question remains, what happened to Tartaria? Was it an ancient empire that fell in the same way as Rome or Babylon, succumbing to the tides of time and conquest? Or was there something more deliberate at play, an event so catastrophic or so well hidden that it wiped Tartaria from the collective memory of the world? In many ways, the fall of Tartaria is shrouded in as much mystery as its rise. The most commonly accepted explanation for the collapse of empires throughout history involves a combination of factors: warfare, natural disasters, economic decline, or internal corruption. But when we turn to Tartaria, there are no clear records of such a fall. Instead, the empire seems to have vanished almost overnight, leaving behind only cryptic traces of its once mighty presence. Even stranger, the absence of Tartaria in historical records is as puzzling as its supposed disappearance. It's almost as if the very memory of the empire was wiped clean from history, buried beneath layers of revisionism and historical rewriting. Some theorists propose that Tartaria was destroyed deliberately, possibly through a concerted effort by other emerging empires. The Russian Empire, in particular, is often implicated in this theory. Given its eventual dominance over the regions once claimed by Tartaria, could the Russians have played a role in erasing Tartaria from the historical record in order to consolidate their power and rewrite the narrative of the Eurasian steppes? Could the Russian Empire, by taking control of Tartarian lands, have intentionally suppressed the memory of the empire to remove any threats to their legitimacy? There's also the possibility that Tartaria fell due to a catastrophic event, such as a natural disaster or cosmic phenomenon, something so destructive that it not only devastated the empire, but also left the survivors in a state of shock, unable to rebuild or record the history of what had happened. Some suggest that the empire was wiped out by a cataclysmic flood, an event so massive that it obliterated entire cities and infrastructures. The legend of the Great Floods is a recurring theme in many cultures' mythologies, but in the case of Tartaria, it could represent a very real, physical event that disrupted the balance of the empire and led to its sudden collapse. On the other hand, there are those who argue that the fall of Tartaria was not a single event, but rather a gradual decline, a process in which the empire slowly crumbled under the weight of internal conflicts, external pressures, and the eventual loss of knowledge. Over time, the advanced technologies and knowledge of Tartaria might have been lost or forgotten, leaving its once great cities to fall into ruin. The rise of other empires could have further marginalized Tartaria's influence, and by the time the world was ready to record its history, Tartaria had already been relegated to the realm of myth and legend. A fascinating theory that supports this gradual decline involves the idea of a massive war, a conflict so all-encompassing that it swept across the Eurasian steppes, leading to the disintegration of Tartaria. This theory is backed by the presence of ancient battlefields and war remnants scattered across regions once believed to be part of Tartaria. Some suggest that this war was fought not just with traditional weapons, but with advanced technology, possibly including the energy-based weapons we've speculated about throughout this journey. If Tartaria's advanced technologies were indeed real, it's possible that their downfall was marked by a catastrophic war involving these very technologies, resulting in a massive loss of life, knowledge, and infrastructure. Yet another theory suggests that the fall of Tartaria was due to a covert operation, a deliberate act of historical erasure executed by powerful forces that sought to obscure the true story of the empire. If Tartaria's knowledge and technology were so advanced, it's possible that the powers that rose after its collapse feared what it represented. By erasing Tartaria from history, they could ensure their own rise to dominance, controlling the narrative and suppressing any potential threats from the past. This theory aligns with the idea of censorship, the erasure of not just the empire itself, but all traces of its existence. According to this view, Tartaria didn't just collapse in a traditional sense, it was systematically erased from historical consciousness. This theory is supported by the absence of any Tartarian records. Despite the supposed vastness of the empire, no contemporary records exist to document its rise, its fall, or its achievements. This lack of historical documentation is what has driven many modern theorists to suggest that Tartaria was intentionally wiped from history. Without records, without accounts from contemporaneous historians, there's little to work with when piecing together the true story of Tartaria. Could it be that the empire's history was deliberately scrubbed from the books by the victors of history, leaving us only with fragments of myth and legend to piece together? But there is also the possibility that the fall of Tartaria was not a singular, catastrophic event, but a slow fading from memory. The very idea that Tartaria was so advanced, so grand, and so powerful yet has left us with so few traces suggests that the collapse may have been so complete that it left no lasting imprint. After all, what are empires but fleeting moments in the long arc of history? Could the decline of Tartaria simply be another example of the rise and fall of civilizations, with time gradually eroding all that came before? Whatever the cause, the mystery of Tartaria's disappearance raises a key question. Why don't we know about it? Why, in all the grand chronicles of history, is there so little mention of this empire? It's as if it existed in a parallel reality, one that has been lost to the fog of time. As you lie in bed tonight, consider this. What if the stories we've been told about human history are only half true? What if there's an entire chapter, a chapter that includes Tartaria, that has been buried, obscured, and forgotten? And could that chapter, once uncovered, change everything we know about our past? The answers to these questions may never be fully revealed, but as long as the mystery persists, the story of Tartaria will continue to haunt us, waiting for the day when its lost legacy is rediscovered. As we near the end of our journey through the strange and fascinating world of Tartaria, one question lingers in the air. What does all of this mean for us today? The theories, the mysteries, the seemingly lost knowledge. How does it all tie into our modern understanding of the world? Tartaria, whether a real empire or a mythical creation, holds lessons that stretch far beyond the past. It challenges us to think differently about history, technology, and the ways we view the past. Let's start with the first major takeaway: the fragility of human knowledge and history. If Tartaria existed in the way some suggest, then we are reminded that what we know about our own past might not be the whole story. History is often written by the victors, and much of what we've learned has been shaped by those who have held the most power throughout time. The story of Tartaria is a cautionary tale of how easily a civilization can be erased, not just through physical destruction, but through the manipulation of knowledge itself. Could the same forces that potentially erased Tartaria's legacy still be at work today, controlling the narrative of history to fit their own agendas? This brings us to the second lesson: the cyclical nature of history. The rise and fall of civilizations is not a new phenomenon. From the Roman Empire to the Mayan civilization, countless cultures have risen to great heights only to collapse. If Tartaria was indeed a powerful empire that vanished from the pages of history, It serves as a reminder that no empire is invincible. The secrets of Tartaria, its advanced technology, architecture, and infrastructure, might have been lost in a time of crisis. But that doesn't mean we are immune to the same fate. Perhaps we should be more mindful of how we shape our own modern civilization, lest we forget the lessons of the past. But there's a more hopeful takeaway to be found as well: the potential to rediscover lost knowledge. While the fate of Tartaria remains a mystery, there's a possibility that some of its knowledge, its advanced technologies, philosophies, and cultural practices might one day be uncovered. In a world where ancient texts are still being translated and archaeological discoveries are made every year, it's not out of the realm of possibility that we might one day stumble upon remnants of this forgotten empire. Could the secrets of free energy, ancient construction techniques, or even cosmic alignment be waiting for us, buried beneath the earth? The pursuit of these lost truths may offer us the key to unlocking a new era of progress, one that fuses the best of the past with the potential of the future. This leads to an interesting thought. What would it mean for humanity if we rediscovered Tartarian technologies? Imagine, for a moment, that we could tap into the ancient knowledge of energy manipulation, self-sustaining power sources, or construction methods that defy the limits of modern engineering. What if the ancient cities of Tartaria, buried beneath the sands and forgotten for centuries, held the blueprint for a future society that is far more sustainable and advanced than anything we've created thus far? Could the revival of these ideas usher in a new age of human flourishing? In an era of climate change, technological stagnation, and growing concerns about our future, the rediscovery of lost civilizations could inspire a revolutionary shift in how we interact with the planet and each other. And yet, even as we dream of rediscovering lost technologies and forgotten histories, we are reminded of another crucial truth: the limits of human knowledge. No matter how much we search or how many mysteries we uncover, there will always be things we do not understand, things that remain hidden beneath layers of time, myth, and speculation. Tartaria is just one example of how history is often incomplete, and it's a reminder that we should approach both the past and the future with a sense of humility. We can never know everything, and perhaps that's part of the allure. The mystery is what keeps us searching, keeps us questioning, and keeps us pushing the boundaries of what's possible. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Tartarian narrative is the sheer creativity it has inspired in people around the world. Whether or not Tartaria was real, the ideas it's given rise to have sparked a global conversation about the nature of history, technology, and human potential. It has made us question the accepted stories of the past, and in doing so, it has encouraged us to imagine a future that's not bound by the limitations of today. The myths surrounding Tartaria are a testament to the human desire to seek answers, to understand the world, and to dream of possibilities that seem beyond our reach. So, what does this mean for you as you lay here, listening to this story? The mysteries of Tartaria may seem distant and abstract, but they carry a message that's very much alive today. Our understanding of the past is always evolving, and the future is still unwritten. Every time we challenge the narratives we've been given, we open the door to new possibilities that could change the course of our future, whether it's through rediscovering ancient technologies, rethinking the rise and fall of civilizations, or simply questioning the stories we've been told. The story of Tartaria offers us a glimpse into the unknown, a reminder that the past is not a closed chapter, but an ongoing story, waiting to be told. As you reflect on the journey we've taken together, it's clear that the story of Tartaria, whether fact or fiction, holds lessons for us all. The empire may have faded into the mists of time, but its legacy lives on in the questions we ask, the mysteries we seek to solve, and the future we continue to build. And who knows, maybe one day, someone will uncover the secrets of Tartaria and unlock a treasure trove of lost knowledge, one that will change the world in ways we can't yet imagine. As we come to the final chapter in this journey through the lost world of Tartaria, it's time to slow down, to reflect on all that we've uncovered, or at least all that we've touched upon. The mysteries of Tartaria are far from being solved, but that's part of the allure, isn't it? The questions, the theories, the discoveries still hidden beneath the surface, all of it adds to the enigmatic charm of the tale. Whether or not Tartaria was a real empire, its story invites us to question everything we know about the past. It challenges the narratives we've been taught and sparks the imagination, nudging us to dream of what could have been and perhaps what still might be. The search for Tartaria has taken us through the winding roads of ancient ruins, through the remnants of civilizations long gone, and even into the depths of human creativity and possibility. We've pondered over its architecture, its possible energy sources, the giants who might have once walked its streets, and the sheer mystery of its sudden disappearance. But in the end, the story of Tartaria is more than just an exploration of ancient myths. It's a reflection on the power of storytelling, the ways in which history is shaped, and how we, as humans, are always in search of something more. Something hidden, something forgotten. Perhaps the greatest lesson from the Tartarian tale is the importance of curiosity. Every mystery, every unsolved enigma, serves as a spark that keeps us looking beyond the surface, seeking out the hidden corners of our world. What we know today about the past is but a fraction of the story. History is a living entity, constantly being rewritten, rediscovered, and reinterpreted. The search for Tartaria is, at its heart, a quest for understanding, a quest that will never truly end. For as long as there are new mysteries to explore, we'll keep searching. You may wonder what's next in your own journey of discovery. As you turn your thoughts toward the questions of the past, let them remind you of something fundamental, that the pursuit of knowledge is never in vain, no matter how elusive the answers may seem. Sometimes it's the pursuit itself that shapes us, that challenges us to rethink the world around us and our place in it. Whether or not Tartaria ever existed as we imagine it, the story has already influenced the way we think about history, technology, and human potential. It's a legacy in itself. And so, with all these thoughts lingering, we come to the end of our journey. The lights are dimmed, the quiet hum of the world continues outside, and the mysteries of Tartaria remain just out of reach, waiting, perhaps, to be uncovered one day by another curious soul. For now, you can rest easy, knowing that the questions we've asked, the stories we've shared, and the discoveries we've made will always be with you. And who knows, maybe one day, you'll be the one to uncover the final piece of the Tartarian puzzle. Now, dim the lights. Perhaps turn on a soft fan for the gentle hum in the background, and allow your mind to wander into sleep. Let the mysteries of the world, past and present, guide you into a restful, peaceful slumber. The world is full of secrets, and while we may not know them all, the pursuit of understanding is the journey that shapes us.